We continue on, inshallah, with Hadith narrations about Ramadan, the fasting of Ramadan, and some of the rulings that have to do with Ramadan and its fasting. The Hadith عن الربيع بنت معوذ قالت أرسل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم غداة عاشوراء إلى قرى الأنصار من أصبح مفطرا فليتم بقية يومه ومن أصبح صائما فليصوم. So the beginning of the hadith states that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he sent the ghada, the food, on Ashura ila qura al-Ansar, to the villages of the Ansar. Now at this time, for many years in the beginning of Islam, the fasting of Ashura was an obligation. It was an obligation to fast the day of Ashura. Until the fasting of Ramadan was revealed, then fasting Ashura became something optional, mustahab, something that's preferred, but not necessarily wajib. So at first, they were fasting the day of Ashura. من أصبح مفطرا فليتم بقية يومه. So whoever, it was said, whoever began the day without fasting, having already broken their fast, then from this point on they should continue fasting the rest of the day. They should fast the rest of the day. Even had they not started the day fasting, from this point on they should fast the rest of the day. وَمَنْ أَصْبَحَ صَائِمًا فَلْيَصُومْ. And whoever started the day fasting, then they should continue the fast. Like, so we take, there's some side rulings that the scholars, they take from a hadith like this one and others. For example, if a person is not planning to fast a day of Ramadan, because with a valid excuse, like somebody that's going to be traveling during Ramadan, so they know that, for example, at 11 a.m. they're going to start their travel. They're going to leave Stockton, head to the airport in San Francisco, and begin to travel from there. The ruling then is that the person, if it's Ramadan, you should begin the day fasting, even if you plan to break fast that day. Even if you plan to break fast with a valid excuse later on that day, as long as you're still a resident, that ruling of the traveler doesn't apply to you yet. So you have to begin the day fasting. Even though you're going to break the fast and make up that day, you still have to begin the day fasting. Or, for example, somebody was traveling and they weren't fasting, and they arrived home, now a resident, during the middle of the day. During the middle of the day. They didn't start the day fasting, but it's the middle of the day of Ramadan. From that point on, it's preferred, it's best to fast the rest of that day. Although what? That day will not count for you. You will still have to make up that day. But to honor the rituals of Islam, to honor the day of Ramadan, to honor the fasting people around you, then you should fast the rest of that day, although you will make up that day. Just as, for example, somebody that is not fasting with a valid excuse in a Muslim society, you should not go out in public eating food, right? It's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to the people that you walk around, eating a sandwich or whatever, right? And everybody's fasting. Although you're not fasting and you have a valid excuse, but just out of respect for Ramadan itself and for the people that are fasting, you wouldn't go out and fast in public that day. The continuation of the narration, قالت فكنا نصومه بعد ونصوم صبياننا ونجعل لهم اللعب من العلم فإذا بكى أحدهم على الطعام أعطيناه ذاك حتى يكون عند الإفطار. And then she said that, and we used to teach our children to fast. We used to teach the children to fast. And if one of them started crying out of hunger or asking for food, we would give them toys to play with so that they can finish the day. So we can make them forget about their hunger and play until it was time to break fast. So here we take from this, what is the ruling for a child fasting? And this actually applies to all acts of worship for children. What is the ruling? What is the ruling for a child doing acts of worship? Two parts to the ruling. What is the ruling? Ruling, we want 1 out of 5 things. What is it? What is the ruling for a child fasting? Wajib, mustahab, mubah, makruh, haram. Which one? Mustahab. So it's preferred. Okay? Therefore, the child doing an act of worship will achieve the reward. They will be rewarded for the act of worship. It will be written in their book of deeds. a good deed or good deeds will be written for them. However, they're not accountable. They're not accountable, so it's not an obligation upon them. We, though, need to teach the children in a light way, in an easy way. We need to teach them the acts of worship from a young age, as the Sahaba did. We taught them to fast. And even when they said, I'm hungry, I want food, I can't fast, they didn't immediately feed them. What did they do? They tried to get their mind off of hunger by giving them toys and keeping them busy until the day ended. So this is an encouragement. Teach the children from a young age. Whether it be Salah, the Prophet Muhammad, he said, teach them at age 7, the Salah. Fasting, they taught them at a young age. Don't expect that you're just going to flip a switch when the child reaches adulthood, reaches accountability. Now you're going to flip a switch, they're going to do everything you tell them to do now. No, it's not going to happen like that. It doesn't work that way, right? So you have to be training them from a young age, doing as much as they can, encourage them, give them prizes, give them rewards, do whatever you have to do, but encourage them and teach them from a young age. باب قضاء رمضان. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. This is the verse that made the fasting of Ramadan an obligation. Allah says, whoever witnesses the day, the shahr, what is the meaning of it? Shahr. What is the actual literal meaning of the word shahr? Correct, but it comes from another similar word in Arabic, which is shuhra. What is the meaning of shuhra? Famous. Okay, so the shahr is the month because when it becomes apparent, the moon is sighted, then the month begins. So the word shahr is taken from shuhra, which means to become apparent. Okay, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. Whoever of you witnesses or reaches the month, then let them fast. This verse abrogated the verse that was right before it in Surah Baqarah when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فِدْيَةُ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينَ, that whoever, during the month of Ramadan, it was optional in the beginning to fast. So you can either fast or you can have a fidya, which is طَعَامُ مِسْكِينَ. You can feed one poor person in place of every day. It was optional in the beginning, and then it became an obligation to fast the month of Ramadan with the revelation of this verse. In the narration, سمعت عائشة رضي الله عنها تقول كان يكون علي الصوم من رمضان فما أستطيع أن أقضي إلا في شعبان. She said I would have days to make up from Ramadan and I would not be able to make them up until Sha'ban, meaning until when? Until 1 month before the following Ramadan. Okay? So based on this narration and another one like it, what happens is the scholars, most of the scholars consider it an obligation to make up the missed days from Ramadan by when? By before the next Ramadan, by Sha'ban, before the next Ramadan. According to most of the scholars, is a view of the Maliki madhab, the Shafi'i madhab, the Hanbali madhab, that you have to make up the days that you missed before next Ramadan comes. And some of them even added that if you didn't make them up by the next Ramadan, now you need to make up the day and feed a poor person for each day. You have a fidya. The fidya is to feed one poor person for each day. Okay? So some of the scholars stipulated that if you haven't made them up by next Ramadan, so you think back, if you missed some days and you didn't make them up for some years, then you need to fast and feed a poor person for each day. If you make them up by next Ramadan, then you just fast the day that you missed. And some scholars said no, they said there is no deadline. And that's an opinion as well, that there's not a deadline, even if you went beyond. Now, of course, if we miss days, we should make them up as soon as possible. Don't delay. This is something that's in your hisab. It's an obligation upon you. It's haqqullah. The Prophet Muhammad, he said, haqqullah, haqqu an yuqda. It has the most right to be fulfilled. It's the right of Allah. So if you miss days, make them up as soon as possible. Don't say to yourself, I'm going to put them off until next Ramadan, and as long as I make them up before that time, then it's okay. No, make them up as soon as possible. And this narration as well, عن القاسم أنه كان يقول من كان عليه قضاء رمضان فلم يقضي وهو قوي على صيامه حتى جاء رمضان آخر فإنه يطعم مكان كل يوم مسكينا مدا من حنطة وعليه مع ذلك القضاء. So he said here that for the person who has days to make up of Ramadan, and he was able to do so, there was no valid excuse not to make them up, and allowed the year to pass, then he should feed one poor person and make up the day. Okay? Now, here we have Al-Qasim here. This statement is from him. So you get into this, this like usul kind of issue and hadith issue of what do we do? Al-Qasim he's the nephew of Aisha. He's a tabi'i. Okay? So he's of the second generation after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So what do we do with the statements of the tabi'in? Are they accepted as proof in and of themselves? Is it dalil? Statement of a tabi'i. The hadith is what? It's either mawquf or mursal. It stops on the tabi'i. So now, this is not a hadith that goes all the way back to the Prophet. It doesn't have a sanad all the way back to the Prophet. So it's not a hadith. It's not a hadith. It's a statement of, let's say, either a sahabi or a statement of a tabi'i from the next generation. What is the ruling on this? Can we take this narration here and make a hukm from it by itself or not? The scholars differed and there's long discussion on this issue. Some of them said, no, it's given some precedence, but you cannot make a hukm from the statement by itself. Because it's not dalil in the deen. It's not a verse from the Quran. It's not a word of the Prophet ﷺ. It's not an ijma' of the ulama. And it's not an analogy, a qiyas. Therefore, you can't make a ruling of it by itself. Others, they said, the tabi'i, we're going to look at which tabi'i this was. If he was of the scholars of the tabi'in, he was a high-level scholar of the tabi'in, like Al-Qasim here, the nephew of Aisha, who learns directly from her. Very good chance he takes the statement from what he learned from her, because the previous statement was hers. So, a nephew of Aisha, a high-level scholar, he was known as one of the jurists of Medina, one of the great scholars, one of the 7 jurists of Medina of his time. So he would be a scholar amongst the tabi'in. Then some of the scholars like Imam Shafi'i, he said, we're going to take this into, we're going to put a lot of weight on this statement. Some of them like Imam Malik, he went further than that and considered it dalil. Imam Malik, because in his usul, he considered what? What was the difference in the usul of Imam Malik as compared to the other ulama?
What the people of Medina were practicing
Is Imam Malik, he said, if I found the people of Medina only 2 generations after Rasulullah ﷺ, if I found the people of Medina all or almost all upon something, then it's dalil. 2 generations later, if you found all of the people of Medina practicing something, let's say you walked into the masjid and they were all, for example, saying Ameen Allah, let's say, right? This is 2 generations after the Prophet ﷺ. Imam Malik said, no, this is dalil. Why? Because it's the people of Medina, a short time after the Prophet. How could this not have come from the Sunnah? So from his usul, Imam Malik, is that a statement like this one, which was mursal, which comes from a scholar of the tabi'in, Imam Malik would consider it as proof. Okay? So you see, there's a difference here as to whether this statement is accepted as dalil or it's not accepted as dalil. If it is, then the ruling becomes clear and you must make it up before the next Ramadan. If it's not, then we would say that it's mustahab to make it up before Ramadan, but we don't have absolute proof. So it goes back to how the dalil is dealt with. Now, من مات وعليه صوم عن عائشة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من مات وعليه الصيام صام عنه وليه. Whoever dies and he has days that are due upon him to fast, then his wali, his close family member, his relative, his family, son, daughter, should fast for him. And عن ابن عباس قال جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله إن أمي ماتت وعليها الصوم الشهر أفأقضيه عنها. A man came to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم and he said, my mother died and she had a month of fasting due upon her. Should I make it up for her? He said, نعم فدين الله أحق أن يقضى. He said, yes, because the dain of Allah, the dain, the loan, what's due to Allah, has most right to be fulfilled, so you should make it up. So how do we deal with this proof? The scholars, they said, this applies to the one that dies owing days of fasting who didn't fast with a valid excuse. So it applies to the obligatory fast or the nadhr. Somebody that made a vow to fast and didn't fast. Somebody that made a vow to Allah to fast some days, but they never fasted those days, then it's wajib, they can be made up by the family member. Or the person who missed days of Ramadan with a valid excuse, then those days should also be made up by the family member. Okay? This applies to the fasting. It doesn't apply to what? Which act of worship would this not apply to? Salah. You cannot make up salah for somebody else. Hajj you can make up for somebody. Okay, they died without having the opportunity, with valid excuse not to perform Hajj. You can make Hajj on their behalf. You can give sadaqah on their behalf. You can fast on their behalf. But you cannot make salah on someone's behalf. That doesn't work, right? The salah was wajib upon them and they had to fulfill it. If they didn't, then they will be held accountable for that. And it cannot be fulfilled for a person who wasn't fasting without a valid excuse. So somebody that just was negligent, didn't fast for no good reason, then we're not going to be able to make up the fasts on their behalf. Tamam? So, a couple of questions based on the narrations that we took. Was fasting Ramadan obligatory from the beginning of Islam? What did we say? We said? No. When did it become obligatory? When Allah revealed? فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. And it abrogated what? The verse right before it in Surah Al-Baqarah. Verse 184 was partially abrogated and it became, you feed one poor person when you have a valid excuse not to fast. Okay? So is that still valid? It's partially valid for the one who can fast. Who's the one then that is allowed to feed a poor person to do a fidya for days of Ramadan? Who is that valid for? For the sick. Like, last Ramadan, I got a cold. And my nose was running, I couldn't fast. Therefore, I'll just feed a poor person. Correct? Based on what we just said.
Serious illness and you can't make it and doctor says
So the perpetual sickness. So a person who became sick temporarily, and then he's going to get better, or assumes he's going to get better at some time, that person still has to fast those days later. The one that can feed on their own behalf is the perpetually sick. Somebody who has a condition and will not be able to fast. Doesn't expect to ever be able to fast. That applies to the perpetually sick or the senior citizen, which starts at what age? What age does it start at? 77? 77. What age does that start at? Senior citizen? 65? 66? What age? Nobody knows that? There's no age? There's no age. There's no age. It's the old person who cannot fast. There's no age. Some 85-year-olds, mashallah, Abu Muhammad, 90-year-old like a 60-year-old. Right? He still walks to the masjid and he still fasts Ramadan. So there's not a particular age. It applies to the person who can no longer fast. That might happen for one person at 60, for one person at 90, for somebody else, hopefully not younger than 60. Right? So those are the two situations where it applies. So the one who's perpetually sick, or the one who can no longer fast due to old age. Now,
this verse was revealed in Mecca for Mushrikeen, and Islam was new for them. How about for new Muslims? They are not used to fasting. They try, but they couldn't do it because let's say they accepted Islam right now at 18, 20 years. They're not used to it. Will this apply to them? Or can they
for the new Muslim, there's some leniency in the gradual learning of Islam. So we're not going to hold them completely accountable for all of the rulings of Islam on day one. It's going to be a gradual approach. We tell them fasting is a must in Ramadan. Praying 5 times a day is a must for a Muslim. However, you're going to grow into it gradually. So we're not going to hold them accountable. If they feel the strength, then they should fast. If they don't, and then after Ramadan, by now their Iman has strengthened and he's able to make up the days now and wants to do that, then great. But I'm not going to hold them accountable yet for all of the rulings of Islam from day one. Take a gradual approach, and each person progresses at their own pace. You have someone like Khalil Victor, who from day one he made i'tikaf the first Ramadan as a Muslim. He was already making i'tikaf and fasted the entire month. And other people take some time to grow into it, right? But so everybody moves at their own pace. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
With regards to the point, you said if you're gonna feel better, then you still fast. Let's say somebody has like food poisoning, right? It can be a day of just throwing up and using the restroom. You need hydration and whatnot. Would you be excused from fasting?
Food poisoning, of course you're excused from fasting and you make up the day later. Food poisoning, you expect to get better. It's not a perpetual sickness that's going to last forever. So you will make up the fast after Ramadan. Once you get better, you make up the fast. Any other person, any other situation of someone who might be able to feed a poor person for each day that they miss, other than the old person or the perpetually sick? Anything else? Pregnant and the breastfeeding. According to statements from the Sahaba, according to many of the ulama, the pregnant and the breastfeeding also can feed a poor person for each day that they miss and don't have to make up the days. That's not the view of all of the ulama. To be fair, some of the scholars, they said that they treated her situation like the sick and they said that she should make up the days. That's a view of many of the ulama. Others, and according to statements from Ibn Umar and Ibn Abbas, they said that she can feed a poor person for each day that she misses, and she doesn't have to make up the days. Allah.
For the person who passed away and he has to make up the fast, you said the wali have to fast. Can they do fidya or no, you have to fast?
The best case situation is to fast. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, فَدَيْنُ اللَّهِ أَحَقُّ أَنْ يُقْضَى, which the statement seems to indicate an obligation. Yes, of course, because it's the deen of Allah has most right to be fulfilled. So it's best to, if that person is capable of fasting, it's best to make it.
Can you divide within siblings if it is 30 days or
permissible? Any family member. If some did some days and some did others, no problem, inshallah. Mariam, you have a question? What's your question? Why did he die? That's what happens in this dunya. You get old, and then you die, and you go back to Allah. Allah is not mad at him. No, everybody has to die. Allah doesn't have to be mad at him. Maybe Allah's happy and He wants to see him. You didn't die, no, you're still alive.
You can have a question here.
Question?
What if you accidentally missed suhoor?
What if you accidentally missed suhoor? Very good question. What do you do that day? What if you accidentally missed suhoor? What would you do? Eat breakfast? Cook breakfast in and nobody's looking? If you accidentally missed suhoor, you should still try to fast. You still try to fast that day. You might be a little extra hungry, but you still try to fast. You do your best. You do your best. Did you have a question?
What if you forget that you're fasting?
What if you forget that you're fasting and?
Like for example, like you wake up at suhoor, right? But and like it's the morning, right? And you forget that you're fasting, and you ate, and then realize that
During the
fasted.
day.
Oh,
During the day? Like after Fajr?
like in the morning. What if you realize?
After the Adhan Fajr or before?
Like after, like you do suhoor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the morning, right?
It's the morning.
But you forget.
You forgot that you're fasting?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you eat or drink while you forgot, then you still keep fasting. And if you forgot, your fasting is still good, still valid, and you should still fast. As long as you forgot. But once you remember, then you have to stop eating or drinking. Don't eat or drink anything once you remember. But if you forgot, you honestly forgot, you drank something or you ate something, then your fasting still counts, and you should continue fasting. Amen? Oh, and tomorrow morning there's the dars after 6:15 is Fajr, and the dars will be right after Fajr.